Live from the Waterkloof Air Base of a plane that is currently hovering. There it is, as you can see. We're not really sure if it is the plane that is carrying the 74 remains of the South African victims. And of course, our reporter, Criselda Lewis, is standing by at the Waterkloof Air Base to give us, of course, the latest. And of course, we've just received confirmation that it is the plane that is carrying the 74 South Africans. Let's see what's going to happen. Criselda, what do you have for us there?
The arrival of those 70 bodies after 2 months of agonizing wait by the families and the friends, the loved ones of the South Africans who perished in that Nigerian guest house church building collapse. The plane, as you can see, was expected to touch down at about 9:30. Certainly that is the cargo plane carrying, of course, the 4 mortuary vans that are on board that cargo plane, as well as 4 vans as well with equipment. Now, what's expected to happen here once the plane has come to a standstill, Alicia, is that here behind me, if I can ask the camera person just to pan towards that direction, this is called a hangar, and that's basically where aircraft are stored. Those mortuary vans will be placed into that hangar for several hours, and of course you would know that at 3 o'clock this afternoon there will be an official ceremony presided over by the Deputy President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, who will of course have an official a ceremony here together with the families who have been invited here, the families of the victims who will for the very first time see, not directly of course, because there will not be a viewing of the bodies, but certainly seeing those mortuary vans will evoke some kind of emotion from those family members. Certainly after a 2-month wait, the South African government says it has been a job well done. There were many challenges relating to the repatriation of these bodies, the Nigerian laws that needed to be adhered to, and various processes, of course. The time that it took for the rescue operation to take place in Nigeria before South Africa, of course, could go in and begin with the repatriation process. Just to walk you through a bit what is expected this afternoon, Alicia, in terms of the program, we're expecting the national anthem first of all, a rendition of that, and there'll be an opening prayer by the South African Police Service chaplain, as well as welcoming remarks by Minister Radebe and the Deputy President, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi is also here as well, the Health Minister, as well as Bathabile Dlamini, who is the Social Development Minister as well. They've been here since this morning, indicating that, the repatriation is just but the beginning of where this phase is. There are many more processes that need to be followed. For example, the children who no longer have parents, whose parents have perhaps perished in this disaster, that the Department of Social Development will look into getting foster care for the children who have been affected by this, and continuing, of course, counseling for these families. Many people handle grief differently, so when that does happen, certainly the social workers will also be sent to the various provinces. As you would know, that just but one of the provinces has not been affected by this disaster, so the provincial officers of the Social Development Department quite have a lot on their hands from this point moving forward as well. But certainly a proud moment for South Africa, in grief though that so many people have perished while they were going to a place of worship looking for spiritual intervention, and to die in such a tragic manner. But of course, these families saying, finally this has happened. We've spoken to them so many times, Alicia, if I could tell you, dating back to when we spoke to many of the family members who waited at the OR Tambo International Airport, braving early mornings at 5 a.m, waiting, not knowing, before the list had been released about who these South Africans were. I understand as well a list will be read out here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base of the victims of this tragedy in Nigeria, and an acknowledgement, of course. And one has to say, you know, with such a difficult task on their hands, the many people who participated behind the scenes, the health workers, the DNA specialists, who have all worked around the clock, as we understand, to make this happen, in conjunction, of course, with the Nigerian government, who, of course, gave the go-ahead just a few days ago to the South African government to repatriate. Of course, those that remain, we know that 74 bodies will come off that cargo plane, but the remainder of the bodies that are in Nigeria, the identification process needs to continue. And basically what a government is saying is that once all of that has come to a close, certainly those bodies will be repatriated as well. All of that communication, we understand, has been given to the families who will not be receiving their loved ones here today. I'm sure it's going to be very difficult for them to continue to wait, of course, but they might be given quite a lot of hope from that, in that they're seeing that these bodies have returned here to South Africa. I'm actually just going to turn a bit towards this direction. I think the plane is going to move a bit closer to where we are broadcasting from. It's coming up on the runway there. It has already landed, and quite a number of army officials here as well. Many from the South African armed forces as well, and basically all here to say that, you know, South Africa, even though difficult, while there were many challenges in getting those bodies back to South Africa, finally all of that has arrived as well. But we'll continue to bring you more here from the Waterkloof Air Force Base as we receive the families as well a bit later on. We understand they're going to arrive here shortly after 1 o'clock, but we'll take a short break at the moment, or rather, before we do that, let's just continue with our broadcast here. As you can see, there you have it. Just a few kilometers from where we are, the cargo plane carrying the bodies of those 74 South Africans on board just that aircraft. 4 mortuary vans carrying the remains of the South Africans that perished in that disaster, and also another 4 trucks with the equipment that was used in the repatriation process. I'm sure from the loved ones who might be watching this on television at this stage, it must be quite difficult for them to imagine what will take place here today. An official ceremony, of course, will get underway, and we see the aircraft moving a lot towards the hangar here, where the mortuary vans will drive into and will be kept until 3 o'clock this afternoon, of course, when that ceremony gets underway. Well, you must recall that there's also been quite staunch criticism over the disaster in Nigeria. We heard a bit earlier on today some of the teams that came off from the earlier aircraft saying that South Africa, of course, does need answers about what happened there, but there's been condemnation in Nigeria as well. You recall from the general manager at the Lagos State Building Control Agency, who basically faulted TB Joshua's church for not getting the correct structural approvals for that guest house, and basically saying that there was only approval to have 3 stories built there, yet it had about 5 at the time of the collapse. You'd know that TB Joshua's followers across the world refer to him as the prophet or the man of God. Thousands of people from all over the world visit his church to seek counsel, to be healed, to be exorcised of demons, and to receive miracles, and to have basically their future foretold. So basically what South Africa is saying here is that they need answers about what exactly happened in Nigeria. A bit earlier on, when we spoke to the minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, who facilitated this repatriation process, of course, saying that Answers are also needed from the Nigerian government. There is no bad blood between the two countries over this massive delay in the repatriation, but Nigeria too did play its role in ensuring and was committed to ensuring that those bodies did reach South Africa.
And of course, Criselda, are you aware at this stage if TB Joshua or any representative from the church is with this delegation at this moment?
Well, not according to our knowledge at this stage, Alicia. It's believed that none of the members or senior members of the synagogue are with this delegation here at this stage. It's a very closed reception that we're having here. Very few people have been allowed to enter the Waterkloof Air Force Base. It's just basically essential members of government who facilitated the repatriation process. Very few ministers as well have arrived at this stage. We only spoke to Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi a bit earlier on, the health minister, as well as Batabile Dlamini, the social development minister, but not much in terms of movement here. I think also in part to ensure that this is a dignified ceremony there, Alicia, and also to ensure that the indignity that has suffered so far of these bodies remaining on foreign soil for so long, all of that is rectified. We've been consistently hearing government saying that they want to ensure that dignity is restored, that the families of these loved ones are respected, and that this is supposed to be carried out like the tragedy that it is, the tragedy of so many South Africans dying in a place of worship where in actual fact they'd gone to seek spiritual healing and for many other reasons why they were there, but it all ended in tragedy, certainly. And many questions, of course, Alicia, still need to be answered about what really happened on that day. But you'll know that the church is maintaining that there were other sinister forces behind the collapse of that building.
All right. And of course, Criselda, you spoke about the forensic team that came in earlier. Were there any reps from Nigeria in that team?
Well, the South African team had been working, Alicia, very closely with a team, a very small team, we understand, in Nigeria, assisting the South African mass repatriation team that consisted of DNA experts from, as well as members from the health sector, from the South African Army's health wing as well, to assist in all of this. But no representatives at this stage from that repatriation team, the Nigerian repatriation team. Of course, all that we've seen is really a bunch of exhausted heroes and heroines who returned on the second flight much earlier this morning, of course, from several days of not sleeping, we understand, who have been assisting with the repatriation process. And, quite a feat, I must say, for them, in that they're saying it's something they needed to do for their country. And even though the task was quite difficult, Alicia, finally a positive response to it all, in that 74 of these South Africans have just touched down here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base on a day that we're really expecting to be so emotional. This is for the very first time, Alicia, that these families will get to see, well, not their loved ones, but of course the mortuary vans carrying mothers, fathers, sons, husbands and wives who are part of the people who are in this aircraft. So it's really going to be quite difficult. From here, of course, those bodies will go to the various mortuaries, and we know that the South African government has said that they would not advise for any of these families to do any body viewing because of the state of these bodies. It's been 2 months, and we understand due to somewhat poor conditions of state mortuaries in Nigeria, the bodies are really in a very decomposed state. So it would add further trauma to these families that have already suffered so much.